Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land.
Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur, expert in management, acceleration, corporate innovation, and marketing. He's the CEO and partner of the company Global Venture Alliance. Please welcome to the show, Zamir Shukhov. Hey, Zamir, how are you doing? Welcome.
Hey, Jens, doing great. Nice weather in Moscow. How you doing there?
Yeah, good here. Not so nice weather. It's raining here in Germany, but that's how it is. Great. Before we dive into a lot of interesting topics on innovation, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What is your story?
Well, my name is Zamir Shukhov. I'm the CEO and the partner in GVA, Global Venture Alliance. And I'm a serial entrepreneur. And for the last 7 years, I've been very active in the innovation community in Russia. And recently, I became one of the members of a business board in the Moscow government that will represent innovation as a voice of startups and the voice of our innovative ecosystem. We also have a small company in Silicon Valley that helps us with some projects that we do in the United States. And, for the last couple of years, I've been interested in investing in startups as a business angel myself. And I've opened up a small school for programming for kids in my hometown. And last year, we had about 140 children in that school. Because of the pandemic, it went down a little bit, but we're going to pick up very soon.
That's cool. So I would like to dive a little bit deeper into you as a person. So I know from our past, and maybe just to let the listeners know, you have been doing the first retail accelerator when I was living in Russia together with us when I was at IKEA. So that's basically how we got to meet each other and got to know each other. And at that time, you told me that you have been living in different parts of the world. So what was that?
Yeah, recent years we focused on building corporate acceleration programs, and we are actually very good at it. In 2019, we received the international award as business #1 private business accelerator by UBI Global. And before doing innovation, I lived for a few years in the United States and had really interesting experience working in different spheres. I learned what the corporate world is about. But when I came back to Russia in 2008, I really wanted to start something of my own. So I became an entrepreneur full-time and launched 2 businesses. They were classical businesses rather than innovation. But later on, working in a big city such as Moscow, I started going around these different meetings, meetups, events, and I started seeing more and more of innovation ecosystem and got sucked into it.
That's great. So moving towards innovation, what is innovation for you?
Innovation for me is something that creates an added value for a lot of people, solves a really serious problem for a lot of people using technology. There is such thing as invention, right? Inventions are created by scientists and by people, of that matter. But invention becomes innovation as soon as it hits mass market. So for me, innovation is something that has to be out there in the market and has to be used by many, many people.
That's great. So you have been working with both worlds. One side is the big corporates when I was there, for example, and the other part of that is like working with startups. Let's start with the big corporations. How is it working with innovation topics in big corporations?
Well, it's different depending on the vertical that we work with. So we started with IKEA, and it was retail vertical, and we did some more programs with such companies as PepsiCo, as Faberlic, and others. But later on, we started seeing more interest from like a bank sphere, because a lot of e-commerce a lot of fintech startups were coming up, and they were actually hurting large businesses, large banks. And then last 2-3 years, we've seen telecom companies, dive into innovation deeply. We started seeing big industrial companies, we started running big industrial accelerators with technologies that don't really have IT in them, but have some scientific inventions inside of them. So the interesting part is even the conservative markets and the conservative companies now understand that you have to work with innovations to stay on top, to be competitive, and to actually, drive your revenues and your margins up. If you don't do that, if you don't use, innovative technologies, if you don't digitalize yourself, you're going to stay behind and very quickly lose your positions in the market. So that notion came to these companies, even companies in Russian market that are actually obsolete and they're monopolies, they still are getting hurt by all these different additional products that are being offered, to compete with their original products. So now it's very clear to all of these large companies and large corporations that if you do not innovate, you most likely will die eventually in 10, 15 years because you'll be losing your market of a share all the time. And the second part of this is some of these companies are very good at what they do. Let's say they're leaders in telecom or leaders in steel industry. They already have best margins in the market. So how do they keep growing? How do they keep developing? How do they grow their valuations, etc.? The only way to do it is by diversifying your portfolio, by creating additional streams of revenue, and by doing innovation. So that's the second part of it. So if you're not struggling for survival, but you still want to grow and your business and have a larger position in the market, you also have to do that.
Yeah, 100% agree. So how does it work when a large corporation is saying, yeah, we need to do something? How do they engage with you?
Usually, before we start creating programs and running accelerators, we do diagnosis. So like whenever you come into a doctor, before they prescribe you something, right, they have to take a look at you. And whenever we do diagnosis, we do like an MRI, like a full MRI of the body. We scan all the processes that are around and near potential innovation implementations. So we talk to top managers, we interview them, then we analyze everything. And in the end, we come up with a big report about what kind of issues they have and what kind of tasks they have and strategic goals and what can be solved with technologies, with innovations from startups or maybe from internal teams. And after that, just to continue, after we diagnose everything, then we run like strategic sessions where we come up with what is the best step-by-step plan in order to reach the goals, like what kind of tools they need, what kind of culture they have to have, maybe what organization structure they need to form in order to be successful at working with innovative startups.
Yeah. So then when they have selected you as a partner, how does it work? So what are the things you're setting up together with them?
So usually in the very beginning, we have like a month of preparation where we've already agreed with them on what verticals we will be looking technologies on. Because we did, a diagnosis before, so now we understand that we want technologies, let's say in marketing, in HR, in logistics, and production, depending where the pain points are. So the first iteration is we built the whole plan, and we work with an internal team in order to make them understand how everything is going to work, right? Because there are so many methodologies inside and tools that we built in. I mean, you can't see them from the outside; they're all in. So we want to make sure that the corporate team really deeply understands how everything is going to roll out, because we're going to need their help in order to bring startups inside the body of the corporation. And after that, we start marketing campaigns. So we start searching, scouting looking for best startups in those verticals that we've selected. And we run a campaign for about 2 months. And depending on the final goal, depending on how many startups we want to see inside the acceleration program, we built the pipeline and collect maybe 200, 250, 300 applications from startups, already pre-selected and already, matching the demand that is coming from inside of the corporation. And after that, we run several iterations, several tasks where we look at the startups, they go through pre-acceleration program, we educate them, we repackage them, et cetera, et cetera. We bring them all the way to piloting inside of the body of the corporation.
Yeah. And alongside, how does it work? What is the engagement of the corporation inside of that program?
So the closer we come to the acceleration part, the closer we come from just the very first stages of scouting to piloting and then the demo day, the more engagement there is. So first it's like 10% of their time, then it's 20% of their time, 30%. And by the time these projects are inside of the accelerator, where we have to pilot them in whatever departments of the corporation, the engagement can be up to 50% between the corporate ambassadors and corporate team and the startup and our team as a third party.
Yeah. And when it's like the final outcome is a pitch day, and then there's like a decision of what's happening with the startups going forward. So do you have any good success stories from your acceleration program?
Oh, absolutely. We've managed to make the methodology much stronger. With every program, it gets better, right? So by having all this experience, plus for last 4 years, we've been traveling to Silicon Valley, to Israel, and learning the best practices from these top companies that exist. So usually, what happens is we have from 95 to 100% conversion into pilots. Meaning that if 10 startups come into accelerator, 10 pilots minimum will be running, which allows us and gives us a lot of data and metrics which are measured on the success of this technology on a small portion of the company, or like a small group of the customers, like 1,000 people. So when startup shows the way this technology is valuable, solving some problem that the company has, some pain points, or achieving some additional goals like new revenue streams, new products, new business models, and they come to demo day with these results, and they come to demo day with the references from like internal teams saying, hey, we really like working with a startup. They really showed an effort. Their technology is really cool. We've built this pilot together with them. These are the results. And they also come with a model of scaling. So during the demo day, right away, they come up with a scaling model. And it's a very simple answer for top managers. Make a decision. You need to invest, $100,000, and the outcome is going to be $1 million, right? So those are the things that happen during the demo day. So if you ask about the success rate, we have about 30% rate of scaling after the demo day. So like 3 out of 10 startups minimum will go into the scaling stage, will sign a contract with the corporation, or receive investment with the corporation, or maybe be acquired by the corporation if they like the technology and the team. We've had such outcomes as well.
Yeah. And maybe just for the listeners, this success rate is pretty high. Because for some people, it's like financial people, it's like, yeah, but that's not much. I think it's super, super good.
Well, if you compare to general statistics out there, even if you take Silicon Valley, companies who run only 10 pilots per year, they have a success rate of 10, implementation rate of 10%.
Yeah.
If you want to increase the rate, if you want to have more implementations and scalings, then you have to increase the number of pilots. If you go all the way up to 50 pilots per year, if you build the pipeline and the processes in a fast track, which means you're really good at it. If you run 50 pilots per year, then your conversion rate can grow all the way up to 75%, which is really good. And then you're going to start seeing amazing results, and it's going to really move the needle. I mean, all these metrics and EBITDA and all of these financial things are going to skyrocket because you've built a full system of working with startups.
Yeah. And I think one part is as well, if you, and that's maybe more my experience, when you work inside the corporation, it's also very helpful from a mindset, because just the engagement with you guys, your trainers, your coaches, the people who are running the accelerator, and as well with the startup on an ongoing base, you learn. It's like everyone from the corporation who's engaging with the startup with you guys is learning day by day by day to see, oh, that's a completely different world. You learn something. Let's say you're a legal person and you're used to have contracts and like you're only paying 60 days or 30 days after they have delivered, and that's just not working in the startup environment. So I can just highlight that it's a super learning as well. Even if it's just about that learning, that's already worth it for a lot of corporations.
Absolutely, and I want to add to this that nothing is going to happen, and no miracle is going to happen unless the culture inside the corporation is going to change. Because no matter how great the technology is, whenever you bring it in, you can hit all the fences, and it's not going to get implemented. So, in order for this technology to be well fit inside, you have to have these people who believe in such approaches. And for them to believe in these approaches, they have to, at least engage with those companies, understand how the reality of the startup world, the technology trends and all of these things. So a lot of times inside the acceleration programs, we build special workshops for corporate teams in order to open their mindsets and have them accept these tools, like lean startup methodologies, customer development, and all of these, fast tracks and weekly traction meetings and all of these things. And now, once they see how this works, they start engaging and they start using that in their daily life.
Yes.
And then you start seeing how the whole corporation starts changing from inside out.
Yeah. And it's quite funny. Just going back when I was part of that exercise, there was a lot of course, internal like politics, which is everywhere in all big corporations, and a lot of people didn't believe in that. But when you then fast forward like 5 years afterwards, that's just basic way of thinking. Like nobody is arguing anymore that a contract should be having this or someone should be thinking like that. So that's quite interesting that if you look at it backwards or long-term perspective from a corporation side, it's a huge change, but people inside that change, they don't realize it at that time that it's a long-term game as well from a corporation.
Absolutely. And what we've seen after we helped some companies build an external program like Open Innovation Program, they came back to us asking to help them build internal accelerator for their teams. So we can, form like product teams and teach them how to create these products fast and cheap and how to test all the hypotheses on the way.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think that a lot of corporations I work with would benefit from that. Maybe we should talk about that when we stop recording. Going into the other world. So you have been building business and working a lot with startups. So how is it from the other perspective? So why should a startup go into an acceleration program?
Well, being an entrepreneur, building a startup is a really tough challenge. And to be successful at that, you have to be a little bit crazy. You have to have, stamina. You have to be really like strong in your beliefs that whatever you're doing is really making a difference. Because if it's just for the money, it's not worth it, because you can really make better living working in a large company without all the stress and all the problems of building a startup. So for me, everybody who is in this business is a hero already by default, because it's a tough struggle, especially because of the pandemic. And we've seen some of the startups really got this big wave and they started riding it, and a lot of them struggle because the customers, they change their behavior. In a lot of processes just stop because you cannot travel, you cannot go to restaurants, and so many startups are connected to other businesses, especially B2B startups. So, I would say that it's a really tough game. And of course, whenever startup can get any sort of help, let it be expertise, let it be some resources, free office space, some mentoring and other things that startup can get for free, they should definitely go after that, because it can save them a lot of energy, it can save them time, it can save them from making basic mistakes like 10,000 startups before then. So accelerators are a tool for actually minimizing the amount of screw-ups that a startup founder can do and increasing startup rate of success. That's what accelerators is doing, actually, helping them to make less mistakes. Let's put it that way, because mistakes are very common. And when you see 10 startup doing the same thing, you're like, guys, don't do that. It's going to drive your startup, somewhere you don't want to be. So besides that, accelerator, of course, they give a lot of expertise and they teach startups a little bit of discipline. So I started seeing, I saw thousands of startups for last years, and a lot of them are lacking basic discipline and basic processes inside the company because they're focused on product and sales, right? They're like, come on, let's build the product, let's sell. That's the most important thing. But if you don't build the processes behind it, if your back office is a mess, if you don't, do the proper paperwork and all the legal things, then you can run into a lot of trouble with the law and with future potential investors. If your cap table is a mess, so all of these things are important to do properly from the get-go. So when we talk to these guys, we try to teach them inside the accelerator that think of startup as a house. If you build good foundation, then you build proper walls, and then you do the roofing, it's going to stay, it's going to be solid. But if you don't do the foundation right, no matter how good the walls are and the roof, it's going to collapse, one way or another. So that's, I guess the good part about accelerators is a lot of proper expertise, compact into a short program and given to startups mostly for free.
Yeah. How is it from a branding perspective a benefit for the startup? So does the startup have benefits?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because whenever the startup says, whatever pitch day, they say, oh, we've completed GVA Accelerator in 2018. We've done this acceleration program with the Skolkovo Foundation, whatever. So whenever they mention and they have a stamp of an accelerator of, let's say, our brand, all the investors understand that this is some quality mark, because we don't accept just anybody into our programs, right? We have a very tough competition. We got like 25, 30 startups per one seat in the program. So you can imagine how well the startup should be to make it to the accelerator. I'm not even talking about going through it and actually showing results. So whenever they go through it and show results on a demo day, and we call, investors, corporate top managers, like 30, 40 people, 50 people every time to our closed demo days, they see that these startups really made a difference and really, started accelerating within 2 to 3 months, because every time they say, hey, this was the situation before the program, and now we're here. We tripled our revenues. We did this. We quadrupled our customer base. So they really show good results that are measurable. And that's good for acceleration, so for the brand as well.
Yeah. So of course, you're doing a lot of business in Russia. What other markets are you supporting or going into?
We've worked with CIS countries in the past. We've built largest accelerator in Kazakhstan. We've done some work with Belarus, with Ukraine in the past. There are smaller countries such as Azerbaijan and Armenia that we worked with as well. I mean, we traveled there. We did some programs. Recently, of course, USA, because we have a base there in USA. We got some serious investments there, and 3 of our funds are running in Silicon Valley. So that's our investment arm that is working there. And we are working now and thinking about Middle Eastern markets and developing countries such as India, because India is a very large country with a big population and good penetration of internet now. So we have a program that is going to be launching very soon of taking Russian innovative companies of a scale-up level to Indian market and vice versa. So those are the things that we do try to work with Chinese market. Chinese market is pretty tough to penetrate. There is a lot of interesting companies there, but a lot of protection, right, from the government towards the market itself. So Asia is a little bit tough for that reason. But we're very open and seek for new opportunities. Like we look at African countries, we have negotiations in some of the countries right now, like Kenya and South Africa. And by the way, we have a project in Brazil. As we speak, we train one of the universities to run corporate acceleration programs.
That's awesome. So if you look at a global perspective, a lot of startups, now talking about Germany a little bit, a lot of startups starting in Germany, they start only in German. I think it's similar in Russia with a couple of startups. They're not really thinking globally from the beginning. What are your thoughts on building a business that's scalable?
Well, I call it a problem of a mid-sized market. Russia is not a small market, but it's not a big market. It's 143 million people. And if you combine all the CIS countries, it's about 200 million Russian-speaking population. It's a decent enough size to create the basic startup business, right? Test all hypotheses, create a product that is selling, have a revenue of a couple of millions of dollars per year, which is not bad. But if a startup is focusing only on that, and the product development goes only to this market, then he's depriving himself of opportunities of building a unicorn. So whenever we work with these companies, we always say that you should have a global ambition. You need to start focusing and start thinking about scaling to global market, to English-speaking market, to Europe, United States, and elsewhere, where you can raise serious rounds of investment. And on top of that, you can actually build a strong and big company and find a strategic investor in the end. Sell your company. Very rare these folks can reach the IPO level, like 1 out of 1,000 maybe. So most of these startups should be looking for an exit by selling their company to a strategic investor. Russia, unfortunately, has only very few companies capable of buying startups. I mean, you can count them by one hand, like Sberbank, Yandex, Mail.ru, now Sever Group, few others out there who are actively buying, but not as much as, United States or European markets, where there are so many corporations that are very open and working with startups and acquiring startups all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's similar to other markets, which are kind of okay. And from a size perspective, if we just take Germany, I get a lot of questions around that. Like, should I focus only on the German market? And I always say, no, don't do that, because you're limiting yourself too much. And specifically, I mean, German, the German language it works in Switzerland, Austria, and Germany, but that's it. That's the same with my business. I only work in English. I'm not working in German. So for some people, it's completely weird. But I say the English-speaking population is way bigger, and there are a couple of Germans who speak English too. So it works.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's good to have traction on your local market. It's good that you, as a startup, raised maybe a basic seed round with a local investor. But if you really want to create a unicorn company, you have no other choice than going global.
Yeah, agree. So slowly going towards an end, I have always a couple of questions which I ask everyone who is on the show. Going into the first one, so if you could work with a project that has global reach, like everyone on planet Earth will be attached to that project, what project will it be and why do you choose that project?
What project would it be? Well, I believe that innovation is a driver, of economy, and technology is something that makes our life better. So I like projects that right now there are few global projects, with the global internet, to make internet available to everybody, to make it free and all around the globe. Because that opens up so many opportunities for everything else. Basically, it creates an infrastructure that allows any innovation to be in any place of this planet and allow, half of this world that don't have good internet access as we speak, get that opportunity and change their lives. I mean, you're talking about education, medicine, and all of other things that internet brings with it. So I would say if I had a chance to work on a project like that, I would choose to do something, with low orbit satellites, with global internet, because that's going to affect everybody's life.
Yeah, love that. So looking forward, in a year from now, where will you be? What has happened?
In a year from now, I want to launch my own venture fund and start investing in scale-up Russian companies who are ready to go global. So be like a trampoline for those companies, because that's a niche that is not yet covered by the local funds. We do have early stage investors, we do have later stage investors, B, C, D rounds, but there are not too many investors that are helping startups to jump to the global market. And because I have good connections in like 30 plus countries, and GVA is a company that is building those bridges, I think we can be a really good, smart investor helping these startups to jump to eternity. Yeah. So that's where I want to be, and hope everything works out.
That's good. How do you keep yourself informed? What media are you looking into? What topics are you following?
I'm trying to follow all the trends, but the platform that I use mostly for getting information is Facebook, and the reason is I've signed up, to many media resources, and I get everything in one interface, so I don't have to jump between the websites. And because LinkedIn unfortunately was blocked in Russia, all the business communications are now going through Facebook. I mean. Because there's no other realistic tool. So that's a tool for me to coordinate and communicate with the ecosystem, with all the experts. And I also get all the news and I see the updates. So I got everybody from the ecosystem in my friend list, right? Whoever is active, whoever is running other programs. So I always see what's going on. And at the same time, I see what's happening in Silicon Valley, what's happening in Israel, what kind of technologies appear. So we always get these news, from different channels, from like TechCrunch and all of these other pages that I'm signed up to on what's going on. And I'm interested, of course, in IT technologies mostly, but I look into different things. I look into med tech, I look into space tech. I'm very interested in education technologies. We run accelerator for ed tech. So pretty much there's no vertical that I wouldn't be interested in. So I try to read everything.
That's great. So where can people find you? How can people reach out to you?
Easiest way to reach out to me is find me on Facebook, Zamir Shukhov. I'm the only Zamir Shukhov out there. So you can see my picture. I look the same on my picture. And that would be probably the easiest channel to get me. And I don't really use much of other social media at this moment because of pretty tight schedule. So would be happy to connect to anybody. Please find me. And
yeah, I will put the link as well into the show notes so that people can easier find you. Oh, Zamir, thank you very much for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for inviting me, and I hope we can get a chance to work together again.
Yeah, hope so too. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical land, magical land. To another place where the